How do you approach breaking stereotypes about Black men in your work?
Just people loving to come to just the Instagram page alone to be like, look at how Black men are showing up as fathers, look at how they're showing up as business owners, look how they're showing up as husbands. I think it's a beautiful thing. And so all of that is really to combat the stereotypes that we do see.
What role do you think it plays in shifting the narrative for boys and men of color when it comes to having mentors?
Somebody mentored me, it took them 20, it took me 10. It might not felt like 10 to me, right?
Yeah.
That's just how we might feel in the
Miss Tashara Parker.
You could just be your whole self.
I knew that I wanted to be something to have impact.
You actually testified before the Texas Senate.
We just want to exist.
Representation matters. You can make a difference every single day.
Show up authentically, loud and proud as the person that you truly are. We're still having a conversation.
Oh my God, I'm gonna get emotional.
The internet's favorite cousin.
I appreciate you showing up as your natural self.
This is a good question, Tashara.
Thanks for bringing it up. Nobody ever brings up.
You're pretty good at this.
We have a lot more coming up. I wanted to see in action.
We're so happy to have you on Loud and Clear. So, okay, we're going to talk about Black Man Can, but Doc, I got to start off really with some amazing, dope news. And by the time people hear this, it's going to be announced in all the places, hopefully by then, okay? Or otherwise, this part going to be cut from the show, but we're going to hopefully keep it in. Okay, so Doc, so tell folks the reason that you were in the city in Dallas today, right? And what happened to your surprise today?
To my surprise today, I put together one of our programs, My First Tie. We were told that we were a finalist for an amazing grant from Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And so they had to put together this whole program so they could see the work.
Yeah.
Thus decide if
we were
would
going to
win. Selected to receive the grant, but I had already won. And this was a whole setup for them to surprise me with.
I'm going to throw in some sound effects right here, okay? I love that. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Which means you're going to be doing a lot more work in North Texas.
Yes, and I'm excited about that. I love North Texas. I'm a season ticket holder to the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, now you ain't say that now.
So
okay, you ain't here all the time. So you want to pass them tickets over every now and again. Just saying. That's awesome, man.
So I'm excited. We've done some work here with organizations like Big Thought and some others in the past. So really excited to be able to deepen our work in North Texas, which allows us to continue to just scale our work across the country.
Yeah, and the people know Big Thought, so you shot out some names that we definitely know around here.
Yeah.
And we certainly know Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A, I'm just going to say, let me say your name right, Chick-fil-A. Okay, look, if you ever want to sponsor something, hello somebody, I'm going to just throw that out there. But I do want to talk about all the amazing work that you're doing, because as we were starting, you were talking about how having all these different streams of the work that you're doing can hopefully elevate you in ways that'll make you more appealing to people that want to invest in the work that you're doing for different reasons. Yeah. So I do want you to talk about Black Man Can first, and then we'll talk about the different ways that you have used Black Man Can to do all the work that you want to do in a lot of different avenues.
Yeah, absolutely. The Black Man Can, so in April of 2025 will be 15 years. So started the Black Man Can in April of 2010 as a blog. So I think for the people watching, you get an idea and just follow through on it. I had an idea. A quote I live by is, once you make an observation, you have an obligation. Ooh. I made an observation that Black men and boys need to see positive images of themselves and have their stories told. I just started a blog, and even the story there is, when in 2010, the blackmancan.com wasn't even available. What was available was the blackmancan.org. This is just an example of ordered steps, because God knew then that it was going to become a nonprofit. I just wanted to start a blog. If anybody wants to start a blog, you're not looking to make a .org, you want a .com. Yeah. But in 2010, God knew we would be a nonprofit 15 years later and doing the work that we're doing. So .org and then .com became available. But again, we just started a blog and grown it into a nonprofit to impact Black men and boys across the world. And it's just been a wonderful journey over the last, what will soon to be 15 years.
What have you learned over the last 15 years with the work that you have done by way of the Black Man Can and its impact?
I've learned, one, that Black men and boys need these spaces. I think we often I don't know if necessarily we don't think we need them, but they're not necessarily as often curated because we're so focused on the next task, focused on getting things done. We don't really stop and smell the roses. I love watching how Black women create community. I love watching how Black women get together to talk and build. And I think sometimes as men, we don't stop and think and do that as much until it's done. And then when it's done, it's like, man, I needed this space.
Yeah.
This was therapy for me. We can share the promising practices from what happens in our relationships, in like romantic relationships, professional relationships, skills. We can share those promising practices. We don't have to be on an island by ourselves.
Yep.
We don't have to suffer in silence. But you only realize that once you're in community with other men, and then you're sharing, and you're like, oh wow, you're going through that too. One of my favorite stories that I love to share about the Black Men Can is we were doing like a dinner, do dinners in different parts of the country, and had a man who was there. So they're curated, and so we do put questions out there aside from just the banter, and everything. But then there's like curated questions to really create a really safe space. And one of those questions always will be, what's something you're going through right now that somebody might be able to help you with? Because you just don't know who's in the room, and you don't know what people are going through. And one man, he was like, I'm a new dad. I'm the first in my friend group to have kids. And my wife is, the doctor says she's able to have sex again, but she's not with it.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling. I
Absolutely.
don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so these are different things that have to do with postpartum, which that's a whole other conversation in terms of men learning things like that.
Oh, I done had some conversations about that, but we can talk about it. Go ahead.
That's another thing for us to learn what that looks like and how to support.
Yeah.
But in that room, a man said, I have 3 kids. I know exactly what you're going through. And then shared with him, like, here's some things that I think you should think about and do. And then we also had a little group chat from just that one dinner. And then watching the group chat and the follow-up, the guy mentioned, he said, I did everything you told me and we're good, right? Just that opportunity to have dinner and creating that space, we might have saved a marriage.
But I also love that you talked about the impact after the fact. Y'all check back in.
Yes.
To see, hey, now you got a little knowledge, some tidbits here when you came this time. How are you doing now?
Yeah.
And that's part of the process that people don't understand when it comes to business and being able to show the impact that you've been able to, do through your organization and the work that you guys are doing. One of the things that you mentioned is by way of the events and things that you have put on around the country, you talked about having the skills. Like some of the men that have been a part of this didn't know that they didn't have what they didn't have before they were in that room, right? So being able to acquire those skills. I learned from a leading psychologist on another show that I actually listen to frequently. And that leading psychologist, it was a male, and he mentioned, not just for Black men or men in general, but what he mentioned was that people want to do better if they have the tools to do better. And he was just saying, when it comes from a standpoint of being able to look past someone's situation or the way that someone has treated you, it's not because they don't want to treat you better, it's just that they don't know if they have the tools.
Absolutely.
And so when you talk about putting on these events and providing, say, the proverbial tools for men to be able to release and have these conversations, what have you learned throughout that process and being in these rooms with these men sharing these stories?
So being like, my focus in terms of my research, my work is around social emotional learning. And so one thing I've learned is how as kids, our social emotional development, especially as boys, is not necessarily prioritized.
Sure.
And when it's not prioritized, what that looks like is a lack of language development to be able to express yourself.
Sure.
And talk about the things that you need and that you want. And when you create these spaces, it's allowing a space for social emotional skills to be developed so that they can have conversations with themselves, having conversations with their partners, have conversations with their friends. And that allows everybody to get better, because while in our schools, we prioritize academics, and it's very important, right? That's what we test. That's another thing. We prioritize what we test. So
Correct.
We test for academics. Everybody can relate to, or if we go back to high school or even middle school, if I say, tell me how you were doing academically, what are your strengths, challenges, and needs?
All right.
You probably be able to give me some sort of a response to talk about, I'm good at this, not good at that, I need help in here. If I said, how are you doing social emotionally? What are your strengths, challenges, needs? That's a little bit of a harder question to ask, but our kids deserve the opportunity to do that, because when they don't, this is what it looks like when you're an adult and you don't have the language to be able to have the conversations and to express yourself. And then that's not where we need the world to be, right? That's not where we need our men to be. And in order for our men to be better is looking at how we're developing social emotional skills at an early age and then continuing that, through middle school, high school, and even as an adult.
So having those tools out the toolbox and being able to provide those at an earlier age so that we can have these conversations as adults and as, in your case, adult males, black males. Very, very good. How's your background as a Morehouse grad? We love an HBCU grad over here. As a Morehouse graduate, influence your approach to leadership and mentorship?
Every young black male in high school should apply to Morehouse.
Come on.
There's every HBCU is outstanding. Got love for all the HBCUs, but only one HBCU is designed for black male development.
Come on.
Because other ones are co-ed. It's just what it is, right? So it's like, no, this is just about.
Some people gonna be like,
I know that's okay, but it's true.
Yeah.
And then even the co-ed ones, they're overwhelmingly women, right? So Morehouse, we have a few sayings at Morehouse. One is you don't go through Mother Morehouse, you let Mother Morehouse go through you, right? And so that's embodying what the spirit of Morehouse is. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. But you also learn that the crown continues to rise. You actually never grow tall enough to wear it, right? Every man and woman was put on this earth to do something unique and something distinctive. If he or she does not do it, it will never be done.
Come on.
These are things that you're instilled in Morehouse from the moment you set foot on campus, and then it's cultivated through classes, through the experiences, through building with your brothers, and you come out on the other side, a young man that's ready to take on the world as a black man, and then think about how you're gonna carry that as like almost the gospel, like of what you've learned, and carry that with you as you move forward, whatever that career trajectory may take you.
Can you talk about social emotional learning? I hate to backtrack just a little bit. I want to make sure that we get this though. Social emotional learning and how it addresses the unique challenges, I would say it is, of boys of color and what they face in education.
Social emotional learning is the process by which students and adults develop the skills, attitudes, and values to be able to process their emotions, cognitive learning, forming relationships. And so when that is prioritized, you are able to develop the language to be able to do that, to learn effectively, to build relationships. There's a lot of things that are certain in life. Some of those things that are certain in life are you're going to always have to learn new things every day. There's something you're going to deal with mental health challenges. It's inevitable. The world we live in is crazy.
Yeah.
So you're going to deal with
Very
mental health challenges. And then you're going to have conflict with other people, and you're going to have some conflict within yourself. How do you navigate those three things is the development of your social emotional skills. And so that's why it's so important for young men to develop them, all of us, but definitely young men, because if you don't, when you hit that roadblock to be able to have conflict with others or within yourself, you can't manage that. If you can't work through learning new things because you haven't really developed your social emotional skills, life is gonna get really challenging, it's gonna get really hard. And then when you hit the mental health challenges that are going to come at some point in life because of the various things that happen in life, you have to navigate that through social emotional skill development. And so if you don't have them or you haven't worked on them or practiced them, then it's going to make life a little bit harder, and people are going to experience it. One of the things I always like to say, when we think about just relationships between men and women, right? Every woman that I know can talk about a story where, like, oh yeah, like when you start digging into social, like, yeah, I know a guy.
Absolutely.
I worked with him. I dated him. It's like, yeah, that if he had been able to work on that more, I think
we could have worked possibly.
We could have worked and these different things, right? And then violence, right? Which is horrible. When you look at school shootings, almost I think 99% of the school shootings have been done by males, right? Albeit not black males, but still males. Yeah. So there's a continuum there of thinking about what are we doing for our boys, just period. But then specifically to your point, thinking about our young men, because even with that, black women can talk about violent episodes that they may have had with men, and if you dig deep into where that violent episode may have started, it's usually conflict with themselves, conflict with other people, not necessarily being able to emote and tell and talk about their emotions. And so we have to prioritize that for the betterment of our community.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't have the language, as you mentioned, to be able to express whatever that is that you're feeling. Okay. Define yourself, redefine the world has become a staple for young men. What key lessons do you hope readers take away from it?
That's a great question because the journal came out in 2013, and so it is now 2024. So we're actually in the process of revamping that to fit Gen Z, Gen Alpha, because they maneuver the world a lot different.
They do.
Than when the journal was written. But one thing is to have a place to be able to do written reflection and to set goals. We know that we can speak about things, but when we write them down, it's more powerful. Like even now with the generation now, I watch kids, they'll take pictures of things. I'm like, you're not going back to that picture. You ain't going back to that picture. Right. So when it comes to goals and dreams, so we need to write it down. So here's this journal that allows for you to think through various topics and write down your goals, write down your dreams, and also reflect through written reflection on what you're dealing with, right? I love going back to my past journals and being like, oh, wow, that's what I was thinking at that moment when this one thing happened or this celebration of something, right? And so going back, you're able to reflect on that and build. It's like almost writing your own memoir without even knowing that you're doing that. And so creating a space for men to write down and think about their emotions and their feelings through written reflection is super powerful. And it's creating a space because I started journaling when I was in the 5th grade, and I saw how therapeutic it was for me, and that's why I even created it so that we can create that same tool that allows for men and boys to be successful. But one way to do that is through written reflection.
Yeah, my therapist don't play about writing that journal, and my therapist wants you to remember how you were feeling in that moment, good, bad, in between, whatever it was. Want you to be able to reflect on that a year from now to see where you are, regardless of what happened in the past, but you can remember how it made you feel in that moment. So that's good stuff. And I also think that as storytellers, as writers, we have agency to make sure that we're continuing to pass down those stories to the next generation. Because I think oftentimes, especially when we look in the world that we are in right now, with the erasure of a lot of our history and a lot of the stories, it is very important that we continue to write that stuff down. Because like you say, you can take a picture, and certainly those pictures will be part of the archives at some point as far as history is concerned. But at the same token, you want to make sure that you're writing that, because writing is forever. They can always pick up that journal. They can always look back in that journal. They can always see how they felt in 2024 as we transition to this new era of a political sphere that we're all living in and through right now. So thank you for mentioning that. How do you approach breaking stereotypes about Black men in your work?
Oh, that is the catalyst. MK Asante is one of my favorite scholars, and the quote that I live by is, once you make an observation, you have an obligation. And so that's what it comes down to, the stereotypes. Like, I see the things that are said about us. I see how we are perpetuated in the media, from movies to TV to the news. And so the Black man can, that's the sentence. That's the Black man can is a full stop sentence. The programs, the content is all to show how we truly are showing up in the world. I think I have so many direct messages, and not let alone you can just read in the comments, just people loving to come to just the Instagram page alone to be like, wow, look at how Black men are showing up as fathers. Look at how they're showing up as business owners. Look how they're showing up as husbands. I think it's a beautiful thing. And so all of that is really to combat the stereotypes that we do see, because now we're seeing more positive images. We're amplifying just the everyday brother who's showing up every day for work, the everyday brother who's showing up as a husband, everyday brother who's showing up as a father, and just as a brother, and just a human, right? I think it allows for us to just humanize Black men and how we just show up in the world. And I look forward every day. I scour the internet. I usually take like an hour a day, just find content.
Positive
because it's
content.
just out there, right? There's so many brothers doing amazing things, and being able to put all that in one place, right? If you go to the Black Men Can Instagram page, you go to blackmencan.com, you can just scroll and you're like, yep.
Yeah.
I know brothers just like that.
And even on the website, I love that it still has that blog-like feel on, there's 2 websites, the foundation page, of course, but also on the, I believe it's the .com, if I'm not mistaken. It still feels like a blog and a news site, media site, where you can still go and click through the different stories that you guys have compartmentalized on your website. So I absolutely love that you're sharing that by way of the Instagram page, but also through a medium that so many people have access to, whether or not they're on Instagram or not. You mentioned the Black Man Can, period, full stop. So were you very intentional about how you created the logo, and you and your team?
So that has been a journey, right?
Okay.
So the Black Man Can started as a blog.
Okay, yeah.
So one quick thing, we're planning a 15-year celebration.
All right.
So, and it's going to be a museum style.
Ooh, I like it.
Event that you come to, and one of the exhibits, if you will be the logo. And so in 2010, it was New York Times font.
Sure.
Because when I started it, it was a blog.
Yeah,
That's it.
absolutely.
So that's what it is. Black Man Can. It looks like New York Times font because we're a blog. Then in 2017, we transitioned to more like, I don't know, maybe it's like more like an Afrofuture, kind of looks like Black Panther-ish type of font because we were prioritizing the nonprofit aspect of the Black Man Can and growing that. And then came 2020 and thinking about, okay, we want to do merch. We're also a nonprofit. We are doing media, right? So what's something that kind of fits all together? And so then we found this font, which is called Blacker. And then in creating that, I was like,
the font is called Blacker.
Yeah, it is.
I love that.
And then it was like, put the period, right? Because it's a full stop sentence. And that's also makes it a unique identifier. When you see it, you're like, oh yeah, and that period does really stand out.
I love it, man. I love it. And I love that through the museum component of what you're doing with the 15-year anniversary, that people be able to kind of relive some of that history too, even the folks who don't know about it. So that's cool stuff. I do want to ask you this when it comes to mentorship. I'd imagine in the role that you're in, either a lot of people come to you for mentorship, or maybe even unknowingly you are mentoring people that are out there following the work that you're doing. What role do you think it plays in shifting the narrative for boys and men of color when it comes to having mentors?
I mean, mentors are essential. I'm not sitting here talking to you without having Dr. Terrell Hill, Dean Kevin Booker, Mr. Irva Seabrook, Coach Ken Smith. I mean, I could go down the list, right, of men who poured into me. Mentoring, the beauty of mentoring is what you need. If it took me 20 steps, I'm mentoring so that it takes that young man 10 steps.
Correct.
Because somebody mentored me, it took them 20, it took me 10. It might not felt like 10 to me, right?
Yeah.
That's just how we might feel in the journey, but it was less, right? Like I think about talking to my mentors and even some of the salaries that I've been able to make before I went full-time entrepreneurship. I saw that salary at an age way before he saw that salary, right? And just different things that I think was really powerful, but it's because I got that guidance, different things that happened in my life, because it's like, oh, listen, I already made the mistakes, I already made the mishaps, do this, and this, and you'll see the outcome. And I'm also somebody who, before I put my own razzle dazzle on it, I'm gonna do exactly as somebody told me how to do it.
Absolutely.
And then I'm like, okay, now I got it. Now I put my own little sprinkle, my own little razzle dazzle on it. And then I get to pass that along, because my razzle dazzle might come because I'm a millennial, when the person who gave me it was a Gen X or a baby boomer. So it's based off their time, right? And so let me add my little razzle dazzle to it. And now I could pass that on. And then when it's Gen Alpha, when it's Gen Z, they're putting their own razzle dazzle on it. But now we're creating, we're breaking generational curses. We are creating legacy, which is something that's really important. I think in some ways we may have, in previous generations, like intergenerational mantle passing hasn't been as good as it needs to be. And so it's really important to me to make sure that is not the case for me and then all the people around me.
And I know we're talking about mentorship, but that's also the importance of storytelling, right? To continue to pass those stories down, to make sure that the next generation does not have to go the 20 steps, so to speak, that we had to take, when they can easily go, I won't say easily, but they can take it down to 10 steps as opposed to going to 20 that we had to endure to get to where we are. Same thing, vice versa, with all the generations that pass down knowledge to us, because I think oftentimes folks forget that we're standing on the shoulders of giants that went through hell and hot water to make sure that we can do and say some of the things that we're doing and being on these platforms. So I truly recognize the importance of doing all of it. You mentioned entrepreneurship and, making sure that as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur, that someone who's following in your footsteps don't have to endure maybe some of the mistakes, so to speak, that you had to endure at the beginning as a new entrepreneur, and stepping out on faith to do this whole journey. I do have to ask you, and we talked a little bit about this off camera, what are some of the steps that you would pass along to individuals that are becoming entrepreneurs, especially those who are moving away from corporate America? Because you mentioned like diversify, make sure you have different means of, your business being able to be supported by companies or individuals or what have you. So give us some of that knowledge that you've been able to acquire.
I think the first is to know that the growth starts with you.
Yeah.
And you have to first think about, let me just share a little bit like my journey. I hopefully
Sure.
if I tell the story, it comes with the gems. So I left a consulting role in October of 2023. So I took all of the fourth quarter of last year, traveled a little bit.
Come on.
Went to Bahamas, I went to Dominican Republic, I went to Antigua, I went to Ghana, right? But also strategizing.
Sure.
So that's the key right there. It's like strategizing. What's going to be the plan, right? Or not? What's the strategy? Because I don't always like to say plan, because when you plan, God laughs.
Sure do.
So I was like, what's the strategy here?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right. So the Black Man Can, we're going to establish these programs, and like we broke it up into like 4 business units. So like we do juvenile justice work. So we do work in juvenile facilities.
Yep.
We do work in K through 12 education. We have e-commerce. We have media.
Yeah.
So okay, here's our 4 buckets. These are also 4 buckets. We can get foundation dollars. We can get fee for service. We can raise money. We can get grants. All these things go into building that out, and then from there, it's getting to the work, right? You have to make the time to. When you're starting out, you're going to work on your business and in your business at the same time. Now, it's very challenging, right?
Yes.
Because you want to be out building the relationships,
Correct.
raising the money, but you might also have to facilitate the actual
Absolutely.
program that you're raising money for.
Yep.
And so that is a part of the journey. Another thing I would say is that everything takes longer than it's supposed to.
Sure.
I think as millennials, we grasp that. I'm not always 100% sure that the generations after us have grasped that as much.
Go ahead. You was trying to tread lightly with saying that. And I'm like, if you don't go ahead and say it, because
I find that like there's a little bit more
instant gratification is what they want.
Yeah, the like I'm supposed to be successful
Absolutely.
tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Whereas like we know worlds where we didn't have like we did Mavis Beacon, we did Oregon Trail, right? The iPhone didn't come out. iPhone came out while I was in college.
Yeah.
Like I went to college with no iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. There was the word app didn't really exist. Right. So I think knowing that everything takes a little longer than it's supposed to, as well as like quoting J. Cole, like sometimes so close can seem so far. Right. And all these emotions. Another thing that I would say too is along this journey, seek out some therapy. A therapist, but here's how I'll phrase it though. Have you ever seen the show Billions?
No.
All right, so Billions is a really cool show.
Okay.
Get a chance, watch. It's like
Where is
Showtime.
Okay. But I ain't paying for another streaming service. I ain't gonna even hold you.
So
but
it might come to Netflix at some
send
point.
me your login.
But it's about a AD and a millionaire, and they battle each other. But there's certain things to take away from it. And so the main character, he has a coach, but it's a therapist, right? And so what I've learned in talking with high performing individuals, both black and white, is that they have a therapist, and sometimes they don't always call it a therapist, but it is a therapist, but it's a performance coach.
Okay.
Right. And so thinking about somebody, because sometimes you talk to your therapist about personal things.
Yeah.
And you can unearth some trauma and, work through that, and because you want to be a better person. Then there's like, oh, it's business.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I have a mental block because of whatever.
Yeah.
I need to sit with my coach to navigate what is blocking me from seeing the bigger picture. What is blocking me from making this vision come to fruition. And so that's been so powerful to have a person to just talk to. but not just about the personal things that I'm trying to become better at as a man, my business side too, because when you're working on your business and in your business, you're going to have blind spots.
Absolutely.
Because you're trying to do both things.
And you only have so much capacity.
It's only but so much.
Yeah.
And so that's been super helpful along the journey, which has allowed me to be like, okay, to take something that was making $50,000, $60,000 a year to like, now I do it full time. So I needed to make a lot more.
Right.
And so how do I 10X that? Right. But having a performance coach, thinking about the strategy, sticking to the strategy, thinking through what are the things you do for free versus the things that are like, okay, no, I need to get compensated in some way, or how do you delineate between things that you do for free because you know it will lead to more things because you gotta go. You know, I'm gonna go do this keynote. I'm gonna go show up to this event. I'm gonna go fly to this conference. Right, and making that investment because the people I need to meet with, they there.
Absolutely.
Or I'm gonna run into somebody and then that's gonna turn into a new contract. Right. And so that's the fun part.
Yeah. But I think too, I just want to interject this real quickly. I think people also need to understand how to pick and choose between some of those opportunities because a lot of times everyone is so caught up in, no, I need to get paid for this. I need to get paid for my talent. I need to get paid for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And sometimes me personally, I should be like, now, if I come there and do that with you, for you, it's not just going to be the audience that you have. You know that my audience is also going to be a part of that. And in return, you're going to make something off of me being part of said whatever, right? And I think oftentimes for me, I think I understand that more than some of the individuals I have been around, only because they always want to get paid for a certain thing. I think I told you and shared with you when we did an event for Essence that 2 weeks prior to Essence, right? I was on stage. That was BET. Excuse me. Look, we did both, but yes. 2 weeks prior to doing the event at BET, I was a host for an event, and I did that event for free. However, I knew that being a part of those conversations and in those rooms could potentially, you never know, but it could potentially lead to something. You just never know. But I did the event because that was something I wanted to be a part of. That event is what led to me meeting you at BET. Yeah. So just want to say that there are always opportunities and you can pick and choose what you want to do, but be mindful of always saying, no, you got to pay me.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you never know who's in the room watching you do what you do.
That too. And then there's, the journey is so interesting because I think sometimes too people want to get paid. Simultaneously, the question also becomes if you're speaking at something that's a paid event, how much money do you bring? How much of your name is a draw? Yeah, right. Because that I've heard numbers that people will give, and I was like, I'm not saying that you're not worth that. However, I don't know if I'll make that much money.
You got to ask the questions.
If your name bring in that much revenue for me. It's just a thing to think about. I look at myself personally, and I just continue to grow and continue to build. But I'm like say it was a music festival. Sure. I use it as an example. I'm probably going on at 4:00.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right? That's just that's just kind of.
Look, and I'm gonna be at 2. I'm gonna be before you even go.
I'm at the 4. A lot of times I'm not going to no festival. So I get there around 6, 7 o'clock. Right. Usually
ain't nobody in the audience yet.
Right. Except the people that rock with you, and then some new people gonna be like, oh, you know what I'm saying? And so
that's
therefore,
good.
but then I'm gonna.
Good example.
But I keep going, and next time I'll be at 8 o'clock. Then I'll be the headliner.
Yeah. That's a great example.
You continue to work to be that. I remember going to a festival and. I went to this one festival. I went to it multiple times. The first time I went, person that just performed was Tim's. Yeah. Now Tim's that same person is now she would
definitely be the headliner.
She would headline
if she decided to accept that event.
You know who also performed at this festival was Kyla.
Wow. Tyler, the creator.
Tyler.
Tyler. Tyler, Tyla.
From South Africa.
Yes. Excuse me.
This is before she dropped the song. Yeah. Right. And so that's the beauty of the journey. Yeah. And then you get to be like, oh yeah, well now I cost this because I also bring in when you put my name on there. Oh, I'm bringing in 100 people. I'm bringing in 1,000 people, 10,000 people. And I think those are things that to assess as you're thinking about your rates and stuff. And also too, simultaneously with all that, you got to say your price and shut up.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think a lot of times.
And don't negotiate that if that's not something you want to do, because when you negotiate that to something well below something you really wanted to charge, so to speak, and you get there and they treating you like what they paid to have you there. Let's say your rate is 10, 15, 20, right? And you go down to 5,000, they're going to treat you like you're a $5,000 host or presenter or whatever the case may be, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think you have to be willing to do certain things for certain prices, certain price points, et cetera, but you also have to know your worth and know that when you step into a room, if that's the situation, what that will command, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I'm always thinking about that. I'm also thinking about margins too, right? It's like, all right, if anything that I do, what's my general rule? Like, I think for me, my general rule is like usually a minimum trying to profit 20 to 30%.
Okay.
Right.
That's good.
And that's like that. If I know that if everything I do, I'm generating 20 to 30%, anything over that, that's
like
awesome.
you doing something,
right?
yeah.
Because because some businesses don't even like generate that on like each ticket of something, right?
That's good feedback.
Thinking about what's your margin. So like, if you know that, so when you price it out, you're like, oh well, here's how much it costs to do the thing, whatever it is, right? Especially like with the Black Men Can, there's times I might get booked as a speaker or moderator, but I also like we actually have programs where like I have to pay X amount of people to do something, right? Even for the Black Men, our media, like how much money we spend on media production this year, right? Like, and they have people that they got to pay, right? So you start to look at something, you're like, all right, here's the price. This is how much it costs.
Right.
All right. Now that might even be where you start to think about, okay, where am I going to charge more on what line item, right? So that I can then make the money that I need to make as profit plus pay everybody that needs to be, part of it.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. And I love that you mentioned the 20 to 30% because folks can always use that no matter what situation they're in, whether it's speaking, hosting, a business, anything, right? 20 to 30%. Look at it that way. Someone that is deeply involved in educational reform, what changes would you like to see to better support boys of color in schools?
So one, again, the prioritization of social emotional development. Again, I think academics is important, but the average adult doesn't remember the Pythagorean theorem, but the social emotional skills is why you will be successful. When you get fired, it's usually for a social emotional skill that doesn't show up, right? When people break up, people get divorced, it's usually tied to like social emotional skills. Like when that's usually the common denominator there. So prioritizing that for our young men is of the utmost importance. Another thing, when I applied to grad school, this was actually a question that they had to ask. And I was like, oh, you know what I would love to see? I think this is a take that people don't share as much, but I think it's fairly important, is I would put credits. So first of all, in high school, you earn credits, right?
Yeah.
Freshman year, sophomore year, that's how you graduate. College is the same thing. I think we should put credits into middle school. So starting in 6th grade, you should earn credits. One, when you're at that age, fairness is very real to middle schoolers, right?
Yeah.
If you spend time with them, you're like that's fair, that's not fair, right? So if I tell you in 6th grade, like you can't go to 7th grade unless you pass this class with at least a C, you can't go to 7th grade. So you must do this work. If you don't do the work, you can't go to 7th grade. In 6th grade, like, oh, that makes sense. If I don't do this, I don't get that. But the bigger thing is that what happens in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, if you're a great student or you're a not so great student, on average, you move to the next grade, right? And so let's just say you're not the best student in terms of completing your work. Not saying that you don't know the stuff, but you don't complete the work, you don't turn it in. So you do that. So then what happens? You get to 9th grade. 9th grade, you got to earn credits.
Right.
But for the
first time ever,
the last 3 years, you could just move forward. So then what happens when you don't earn the credits? You stay in 9th grade. We all can probably remember at least a few people who the yearbook came out when we were juniors, and you're like,
now wait a minute.
we was in 9th grade together, but you're not in the 9th, you're not in the 11th grade part of the yearbook anymore. You like, but what happened was they didn't earn the credits.
Yeah.
So what happens when you just create a system mentally that like, in order to move through middle school, high school, and college, you just earn credits. So a take that I have is, what would it look like even with our young men to do that? Because when it happens in 9th grade, ultimately you can become a 16-year-old ninth grader, which technically means you wouldn't be able to graduate till you're 20. But your friends left 2 years before. You're not seeing the end of high school.
Yeah.
You're doing a GED, you're doing Job Corps. So like one of the takes that I have is creating credit-bearing systems for middle school students so that they have the idea that they have to earn credits from 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade to see the following grade, which then I think would curb dropout rates because students would know, like, I have to earn credits and need
To
at
get to that
minimum
next
to
level.
get to the next level, thus getting us to more students just generally graduating from high school, specifically our boys, because even when you look at when you look at even high school graduation rates, girls graduate at a higher rate than boys.
Yeah.
Go to college, girls graduate at a higher, right? There's something there around girls and just wanting to get things done, like the concept of like do this, do that, do this is interesting, but our boys aren't necessarily there. But I think you can cultivate that mentality starting in 6th grade, and that's something that I would love to pilot. I would love to get like a huge grant.
You better put it in the atmosphere so they can know.
To do that, I mean, it's a longitudinal study.
Yeah.
Because you have to start with 6th graders, right? And you wouldn't know
Until they finish school.
until they finish high school. So it's a really long period of time. But I think it could.
I've seen a longer study, so it can work.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that would be something that would be fascinating to see for our young men. But social emotional development, earning credits early on,
Which are some good ones, absolutely.
and then continuing to create the opportunities for positive role models and for them to see black men who look like them. That's one of the catalysts for the Black Man Can, right? If you go to a lot of schools here, even in Texas, no matter where you go, you ask some young men, what do you want to be, right? They might say, I want to be an NFL player, I want to be a basketball player, I want to be a rapper, right? And I'm never too upset about that. One, because I know what they watch. So if you only see black men celebrated in pretty much those capacities, you might ideally only want to be that because that's what you see being celebrated, what you see on television. So that's the thing. My issue is that when I meet boys who say, I want to be a video game designer, I want to be a photographer, I want to be a host of something, right? They don't say it with as much confidence as the boy who wants to be an athlete because they haven't seen it as much. So what happens when that boy also says it with the same confidence, like, I'm going to the league. You've heard of a young boy. I'm going to the league. What do you mean?
All right.
Right? No, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be a TV host. I'm going to be a sports anchor. And say it with the same confidence. And so that comes from creating spaces for them to see and be around men who are doing those things that look like them.
Absolutely.
And when we do that, I think just those three things, and there's more we could talk about, but I think that would be some amazing outcomes, could lead to amazing outcomes for our young men.
If you can give me a one-liner about the vision and the legacy of the Black Man Can, what's that?
The vision and legacy is to become a heritage brand, right? Like when you talk about Urban League and NAACP and some of the other ones that really mean a lot to our community because of what they've done over the years, I want the Black Man Can to be in the same vein. I want there's some really amazing organizations out there doing a phenomenal work around black men and boys, and we've chronicled some of those, and from social media to our website. And the legacy of the Black Man Can is to be a $5 to $10 million nonprofit where every day and everybody that works there, all they do is when they wake up, they're thinking about how can I improve the lives of black men and boys.
Good.
That I'm not sure if truly exists where like that's the only thing we think about. And even when we're doing that means that we care about the lives of black women and girls because we're trying to improve the lives of black men and boys.
I love that. How can people find you?
How can people find me? Instagram is the Black Man Can. X. I don't know if we rocking with X right
We
now.
not, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I don't. No, actually, I only have a personal for X. We don't even have the Black Man Can on X. Yeah, it's the Black Man Can.
And the website?
Website, www.theblackmancan.org, www.theblackmancan.com. We're kicking off a big fundraising campaign next year leading up to the
Good
15 year.
Yep.
So want people to support that and our programs, and we are, just creating pathways, opportunities, and showcasing how black men and boys are showing up in the world.
Dr. Brandon Frame, thank you so much.
You're welcome.